in our hands. Here we stand. I'm a teacher, I'm black, and I'm a man.
In demand,
Hard,
in demand,
intelligent,
in demand,
integrity.
in demand.
In demand. Teach, mentor, volunteer.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of the In Demand podcast. I have a very good friend of mine with me today. This is Mr. Shannon Gaston. Been knowing him since I was a teenager, so we have like over 20 years of friendship. And I'll let Mr. Gaston, Shannon, introduce himself.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm glad to be here on the In Demand podcast. Like Quan stated, I've known him since he was a teenager. I am a youth development practitioner of 20 plus years now. I like to say holistic youth development with an emphasis on spiritual enrichment. I am a Wayne State alum. I live in the city of Detroit with my wife and 2 daughters, and just love to see young people reaching their full potential, and really proud of this young man and the role that he's played in that with hundreds of young people by his footprint that he's leaving in the educational sector. So glad to be here.
Oh man, thank you for being here, man. Thank you for those wonderful words, man. Man, I'm excited about today. The reason why we have Shannon here as the co-host is because I learned about this event from Shannon back when I was in college, actually. What we're going to talk about today, and we have some guests who were actually a part of this movement. It's the 1989, Shannon?
Yep.
The 1989 Wayne State University study-in. The situation that we're talking about today, the event, is where you had some young people who, in the city of Detroit, who saw that there was an issue with the learning and the education at a local university, Wayne State, and they decided to do something about it. And we're going to learn what they decided to do and what they did about it and what the impact of it was. So today we're talking about the Wayne State University study-in. And Shannon, I don't know if you want to add something to that, man.
Yeah, so I think it's a very timely topic when we think about what's happening and what we saw this summer, and young people, namely African Americans, finding their agency and their ability to affect societal change. That was a lasting memory for me as a freshman on campus at the time that happened, with the study-in at Wayne State. And so I think it's a story that needs to be shared and highlighted and commemorated. And so I'm excited to talk to some people who were, on the front lines of actually what unfolded, so we can learn, and hopefully this will inspire, a new generation that needs to see it and understand that, yes, this is a part of your legacy, and it's a lot of work still yet to be done. So
yeah, and it's definitely inspiring. I mean, when I heard about it as a freshman in college, I was inspired. And it was like 10 years later, past the event. So definitely concur with that. Definitely an inspiring piece of Detroit history. So without further ado, let's bring in our guests today. We'll have them introduce themselves. And all right, so right now we have our guests, some of the original members, original participants, original planners of the Wayne State University study-in, and I'll have you guys introduce yourselves. So we can start with you, Adrian.
Oh, yes, my name is Adrian Rutherford. I am an alumni of Wayne State University. I received my business administration degree there with a minor in Africana Studies. I also am an occupational therapist, and I work with children with pediatric issues and traumatic brain injuries and sensory disorders. I am what you would consider maybe a trailblazer, along with my other dear friends and my cousin Chris here, who was my inspiration for actually even being a part of the movement. And a lot of times when you are a trailblazer, you're so busy pushing the dirt ahead of you, you don't see the trail that you're leaving behind. So I just want to thank you guys for acknowledging us and giving us the opportunity to express the experiences that we had, and hope it's something that will motivate the youth to learn about themselves and the history of this country and how they were a part of it. So that's it.
All right, Pharaoh.
Okay, hey, I'm T. Muhammad. I too am a Wayne State alum. I have a degree in the Fine Arts Department in theater with a concentration acting and directing. And am now a professional actor and instructor here in the city, among other things. So I am very proud to be part of this august body with these wonderful people who I've known for over 30 years and have developed a great deal of love and respect for. But also to follow behind what Adrian has said with respect to, trailblazing. I think that what we are seeing in the generation behind us is even potentially more monumental than what we've done.
Absolutely.
And we want to do whatever we can to keep the fire burning because whatever battle we won, it was just a small piece of the greater war. So.
I'll jump in. I'm Chris Rutherford, Wayne State alum, graduated from Fine Performing and Communicating Arts with a degree in journalism. Longtime educator. I'm currently a college access professional working with the Michigan College Access Network, setting policy and technical assistance across the state for creating equity in post-secondary access and success. I'm also the chairman of the board for Broadside Lotus Press, which is the oldest African American owned publisher of African American poetry in the United States. Was founded by Dudley Randall in 1965. And we later merged with the second oldest, Lotus Press, which was founded by Dr. Naomi Long Madgett in 1968. And so I am the chairman of the board who published such notable poets as Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, Hakeem Adabudi, Audre Lorde, as well as Dudley Randall, just to name a few of the historic poets that have come through Broadside Press. This is a phenomenal opportunity. Since 1989, this event has never been, to my knowledge, documented in this fashion, either written or digital media. So this, I believe, is a first. Thank you, brothers. Extremely proud to know both Shannon and Quan, who are trailblazers as well. And thank you all for all you do.
Right. So, I just want to, thank you for the introduction, and just want to get right into it. So I guess we definitely want to dig deeper into it, but if you had to explain to somebody that never heard of the 1989 Wayne State University study-in, explain to us what exactly was it? What was the study-in?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, go ahead, Adrian.
No, I said you go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the study-in was an opportunity for students at Wayne State University to create an environment where African history was celebrated. And not only just celebrated, but also to create a degree granting department where one could not only get a degree in Africana studies or the history of the African diaspora, but also have impact on other departments as well as education, medicine, engineering, but to have an impact on those departments regarding the region and the space that we live in of Africans living here in America. It was a student act to take over a building and force the university to create a department, one that it had neglected to do since a student action since 1968.
And I just like to mention that the trigger for all of that actually came from our Africana studies or our Black studies classes. We had some very strong-willed professors who had inspired us, like Pat Coleman Burns and Earl Henderson, among others, who gave us a knowledge that we were unable to receive in the Detroit public school system. I am a product of Detroit public school from elementary all the way up to high school, and I was not afforded the opportunity to learn about who I was initially outside of the school books that they gave us at that time. So in receiving this information, it set a spark off in a lot of the students that were there. And once they had decided to take the Black Studies Department and the Black Studies Center, which was at the top, on the top floor, the fifth floor of the student center building, and they wanted to take the books and dismantle the office and send the books over to the Detroit Public Library. So once that word got out, they started making plans and doing flyers and all kind of things to stimulate the students, to let them know what was going on. So a lot of the ones who were actually in these classes, and we were already fired up with this new knowledge of ourselves and this new inspiration, it just caught a fire, you know, as Bob Marley would say. So that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, I don't know how to sum it up any better than what they said, but yeah, it is. Yeah, just like that. You know, we were inspired as you have to realize we were still very, very young. I mean, we're still young. We're still young, obviously, but but that we still had some of us still had teen in our age, right? And so I was blessed, though, even though I'm a product of Detroit Public School, I was blessed to have some progressive teachers in elementary school. It was actually in elementary school at Berry Elementary, where I had a music teacher named Ms. Burns, who was the first one to tell me at 6 years old that Beethoven was a Black man. Mm-hmm. And it was in middle school or junior high school where I was taught, I guess, officially, in the drama class by the brother of famed Lloyd Richards, who directed James Earl Jones and Fences on Broadway. And he gave me a certain awareness, if you will. And then I got to high school and I had a world history class teacher named Mr. McCrae, and my track coach, Coach Lewis, may he rest in peace, who gave it to us real. But these were men and women who were activists when they were in college. So I was blessed that at each school I went to, I had a teacher or two that were conscious enough to want to make sure that the Black students knew something about themselves. So when I got to college, the seed had already been planted. It was just germinated with the circumstances that were on the campus. And once the fire was really stoked, it was on and popping. And I think one of the things that people really don't realize is how strategic. I don't know if I'm going too far into the discussion with this point, but I don't think people realize how strategic the initial takeover was, because we didn't just occupy a building; we occupied 5. Yeah, and so and it was later in that evening where it was determined that we would amalgamate into one building, and everyone would matriculate from the other satellites, and we would wind up in the Helen Newberry Joy building. But we wanted to make sure that the university had that we had their full attention. So taking over one building, okay, they are over there making noise, but no, we had 5, if I'm not mistaken, 5 of their buildings, and these were not. It's not like it was the cafeteria. It's not like it was the sports arena, the gym. We had some very important facilities that a business would operate. So we were very strategic in our. I'm sorry.
I said the building we took over was a nerve center.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And you did go ahead of us, which is fine, right? Like I said, we'll let it flow organically, because we did want to get into some of the strategic aspects of that, because that was not lost on those of us who knew what took place at HNJ, Helen Newberry Joy, right? Like you say, it was the nerve. So we want to come back to just how those discussions were had, and how you guys consolidated, because even as we alluded to the things that have happened with the Capitol, this is obviously decades before social media, right? And so you think about the ways that they gain momentum and spread the word. I want us to kind of capture the essence of the times that we were in, and how did you guys communicate, like you say, across 5 buildings without cell phones, and to be able to have discussions and decide, we're going to consolidate in this particular location, so yeah.
It's ironic that you say that, because although there was some strategic things going on as far as the planning of actually going into the building, a lot of us, like myself, were just ignited, and we were a part of the movement that actually just pushed into the building. I think it was like 200 of us that was in there, and it was a very small group of people who were actually like organizing. If I'm mistaken, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of us, just once we found out what was going on, we automatically just pushed in and did, played our position, did what we had to do at that time.
And
So it wasn't so strategically. A lot of it, like you said, was organic. It was like the doors open and we just rushed in. We didn't think about it. We didn't have no clothes. We didn't have anything. You know what I'm saying? We just rushed in. We had our our backpacks, and that was it. And we worried about everything else, later on. We actually didn't worry about anything else because we were in that spontaneous moment, So
and I do want to elevate quickly that everybody has their own unique experience from the study-in. So like where Adrian, how she came into it, how Brother Farrell came into it, how I came into it. We all came at it from different angles on one common agenda.
Right.
And what kind of sold that common agenda was first the professors who were talking to us about things like not being able to get tenure because the department wasn't a degree granting department. And then identifying the fact that although Wayne State was an institution with high African American enrollment and high population of African American executive staff compared to other predominantly white institutions, it was still a racist institution. And one of the ways they identified that racism is the fact that there was a center that had been there for years that they would never fund and elevate to a degree granting department, so that professors that taught Black studies at the time could get at the university, which goes into publishing and writing grants and those types of things, and understanding the university system. But in the planning took place over several. And there was also an ad in the school newspaper, which was ironically started by Black students, called the South End. But there was an ad. Now it was just general school newspaper. At the time, the movie Lean on Me had come out with Joe Clark and the Bat and all that kind of stuff. And they had ran an ad, also said with two white guys sitting on a pickup truck saying, we've been chasing Black people around with bats for years, and nobody nobody did a movie about us, or something to that effect. That not exactly, but these were the things that were building, along with discussions about what Wayne State really was, in terms and how it treated Black professors, how it treated our culture and history, the dismantling of the department. Really started to talk, and initial meetings started around group meetings started around just calling leadership from Black organizations. I got into it because I was on the board of the Association of Black Communicators, and so we had pulled together really a cross section of people. I mean, we had every cross section of the African American community. You had Christians, Muslims, Buddhists. You had frat, you had GDIs, you had music students, you had engineering students, whatever it was, we really came together. But in part of that planning, it was really just a series of meetings, figuring out how we were going to address it. And, some of the thinking around taking over 5 buildings was to make a statement of not just doing, not just going into one building, right? And part of it was to throw off some of the security, right? To say we always figured we were being listened to. We always figured there were people in our midst who would go back and tell. And so part of it was to say, okay, we're gonna hit these 5 buildings, but where do we come back at? And to the point where we even changed the date the night before, right? Everybody got a phone call saying we're going in tomorrow and not Thursday, right? Or whatever the day was, because the police know about it and they're gonna be ready for us. And so there was a lot of strategic engagement around that. Now, don't get me wrong, we didn't have it all planned out, right? But we did know what we wanted to do, and we were resolute. Didn't know it was going to be all those days, but we were resolute in staying there until we had action. And so there were a lot of pieces that came from different trajectories. Like it was literally a potluck, right? Everybody threw their own expertise in. Like I said, we had athletes, just a total cross section of Detroit.
Military too.
That participated, huh?
I was saying military too. We have
military as well, ROTC, the whole 9. People who were
for the sake of the listeners, explain what a GDI is, because I was listening to all the GDIs are
independent, man.
Independent.
Yeah.
that would be the I in GDI, but and so let's keep it all the way 100 for the sake of our audience, to let them know how diverse this group was.
I always refer to GDI as a goddamn individual.
Yeah, and that's how they refer to themselves as well. Yeah.
I'm interested. Adrian mentioned about 200. You had about 200 people that participated.
Oh yeah.
And then them knowing like their position, like what were the positions, like what were the roles that some of the roles that people played.
Oh my God, that. You know what? People fell into roles.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They fell into roles. We had people who was monitoring the food. You know what I'm saying? We had people who was on guard duty. We had people who were actually in there, studying. We had people just meeting and greeting. People was just being. We were kids, and we were being kids in here. You had to realize at that time, hip hop was like powerful. We had Public Enemy, we had X Clan, KRS-One. You know what I'm saying? We had all of this, just stirring the pot. And then we had, like Chris said, different cultures. We had people who were in Islam, and they was bringing books in about, the history that, I had never seen before. It was just an enlightening moment. And there are also some very spiritual moments in there as well. It was a spirit in the place. And I don't want to dismiss that fact. It was a very powerful spirit in that place. We had ancestors there with us, and they let it be known because they pulled the whole community out to support us because they wanted to firebomb us out of there. Coleman Young was the one. And I love him to this day. He told them, "You will not firebomb my babies out of that building." And he said it just like that. And he meant that. So
he said no matter what happened, the Detroit police wouldn't get involved.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was having a conversation about this prior to the podcast in preparation. We actors always have to rehearse before we go on, right? So, but I was saying that that one of the things that I remember, and Lynn, you sparked this in my mind when you mentioned how the ancestors were there or the spirit was there. Because as wonderful as again, I hope I'm not going ahead, but as wonderful as the experience was, we can't romanticize the complete, experience. There were some tumultuous times in science. There was some emotional trauma that many of us experienced. There was bickering, there was infighting and things like that. But what was interesting, then no one ever put their hands on anyone.
That's right.
We had some very, very intense beefs inside, and no one came up, no one went into a book and said, okay, this is how we settle it. We had a circle, and people got in a circle and they hashed it out, and we dealt with it, and then we moved on.
Yeah.
in true African tradition.
Yeah.
You know, so in situations like that, we weren't even in control of what we were doing. We were being moved by the spirits of our ancestors, and so and I think had that not been the case, our momentum could have started to rot from the inside because of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But the importance and the significance of it was so much that the ancestors would not allow that.
Pharaoh, can you that's powerful. It's like
it was
how how I would imagine some people may have been more mindful than others of what was happening, because even in '89 we know what we've already overcome, right? And we know we've seen the Panther Party, we've seen it implode from, and we've seen failed insurrections that didn't happen because of a snitch, right? I mean, so can you give an example of what was some of the content that would cause people to have to get into that beef circle and in that circle to squash a beef, right? Was it an approach about what the list of demands were going to be? Or can you just expound upon what were some of the things that were causing the need for that circle? But that's very powerful that circle existed.
Well, it happened a few times. One that I can remember, because here's the other thing. There was a lot of machismo. Again, I don't want to romanticize the situation, but there was a lot of machismo, and there was some intellectual bullying sometimes that would happen, and people would start to get a little bit perturbed by it, and so you would have some clapping back, and because it was supposed to be a collective of ideas of how and what, and the negotiating team would take that and go into negotiations on our behalf. It wasn't a show for those who were chosen to be the negotiators. It was, these are the ones who talk the best, right? So they're going to be the ones representing all of us. But these are the things that we want. Well, when that becomes, or appears to become, maybe tampered with, well, that's not what we said we wanted. That's not how we, you said something on the news that is not what we said in the meeting. Those types of things would happen. And so we would have those clashes, and there would have to be that coming together. We call it now a come to Jesus meeting. And that's essentially what it was. There was another time, where there was a gentleman who was on the outside, and he didn't know that I was part of the security team. And I was doing a little lightweight recon, right? And I was listening to what was being said before I went inside the Helen, Newberry, Joy. And he's outside. I'm sorry, we were in another building. And he was talking very badly about one of our negotiators. He didn't know that I was with the crew. He was just saying, he's out of control. His ego is this, that, blah, blah, blah. And I went to one of the negotiating team members, and I said, hey, listen, that gentleman right there said some very inflammatory things about another one. I don't know if I should mention names right now, but I said, I don't trust him being here. Because if you are willing to say out and publicly that one of us is in error, right, then what else are you willing to say? I think something like that should have been a closed door. Hey, listen, you and I need to talk, or we need to talk. Negotiating team, we need to talk. We're going to be back. And then you hash that out like we did in the circle. But to publicly bash one of the key members of our negotiating team, I thought was completely inappropriate, and he was asked to leave. He was dismissed. So for me, this thing was too big. I lost a scholarship. We all faced expulsion. It was too big for me to let someone with a runny mouth potentially spoil what we're trying to do. So I said, he shouldn't be here, and eventually he was dismissed.
And that is tremendous. Just it gives me chills to think about when we talk about roles, right? We didn't have a leader, right? And they kept saying who's the leader, but we did nominate spokespeople. Sometimes because they could speak real fast and real sweet and real clear and had all the history in their head. But so we did choose spokespeople, but they weren't leaders. So there wasn't a leader. It was truly a collective effort. And as they talk about, putting people in roles, petty jealousies would rise up, and people would disagree.
Right.
Relationships would happen, and people would get mad, on both sides. There were petty things, and then there were serious things, which Farrell just talked about. When you have people who go out and do things, and we were very conscious that there were people who didn't understand it. There were people who were there, thought it was like a 1-day thing or a 1-minute thing. And then when they get there, and then they wanted to be critical of what was happening or not happening. We were blessed with some great professors who would help us, but even some of the adults on the outside would sow seeds of, and I shouldn't say sow seeds, but they had different opinions about how it should take place. Some would say, stay here and don't ever leave. Some would say, oh, okay, you made your statement and go home, right? And so we had to navigate all of these different ideologies about what a student study-in. We were intentional about calling it a study-in and not a sit-in or a takeover. But what a student study-in was about. It wasn't what was done in the 60s. We wanted to be clear about that. And so we're not going to use your 60s strategy around it. And so while we respect your wisdom, you cannot decide what we do. And that created conflict, right? Some people are like, how you gonna tell mama or baba, they can't speak right now? Well, because right now, this is our decision to make it. We got mama and papa's wisdom, but we got to keep it moving for us in 1989. I had recently had a conversation with a young man in Baltimore who was doing some student activism. He kept saying the old people were getting in the way. And I said, you listen to the old people, respect their wisdom, but you ain't got to do nothing they tell you to do. This is your time. This is your movement. You ain't got to do nothing. They do it in your way and as you all see fit in this time. So,
yeah, we had a lot of people that wanted to remain relevant.
yeah.
And I understand. You still feel you've got something to contribute. You still, feel like, that's why a lot of boxers, wind up what they say punch drunk, because they think they still got it. And they stay in the game way past their prime. So I know that may not necessarily be the best analogy, but sometimes you do stay in the game a little longer than you should, and no leader is worth their weight in salt if they're not preparing the next generation to carry on the tradition. You can't stay at the front forever. Even geese know that. At some point, the lead geese is like, hey, I'm tired. Somebody else come up here and keep this pace. I'll go in the back and I'll squawk with the rest of them to keep you going. We'll switch up. So we seem in our community to have this desire, mostly the men. I'll be brave enough and transparent enough to say that, and mostly
Good for you.
we men have this idea that only us, and I understand not quitting your post until properly relieved, and that would be death. But I'll say this. I know I can't run 100 meters the way I did when I ran track in high school, but I can definitely tell a young cat who can how to do it better.
Yeah.
And let him run his race.
Yeah.
I can give him my experience line. This is how, this is what I did to keep from getting winded. This is what I did to overcome shin splints. This is what I did to, come out of the blocks a little faster. Now, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to do any of that. But you can't say that, man, I was trying to do this and nobody taught me any different. You won't be able to say that. And I think that's where we fail the generations one to another, when we're not willing to pass the mantle on in that relay race and say, okay, now here's your leg to run. And I'm going to be right here behind you, rooting you on, telling you to go ahead, because we got to win. And that's what counts. Don't matter which one of us on the team crosses the finish line, we all going to be on the podium with that medal if we win.
That's a good. Go ahead, Adrian.
I wanted to expound on, I think the most profound piece for me was as far as being a part of this life-changing experience. It changed my life, those 12 days changed my life forever. But I really want to say the most profound piece for me was the community part, the community aspect of it. How, people from all over was just out there. There were drums, there were dancers, everybody was there. And at that time, it was like one of the most profound runs for the mayor of the city of Detroit was at that time. So you had Irma Henderson, you had John Conyers, you had Coleman Young, you had
Tom Barrow.
And the other guy, his son was
Ken,
on the city
Ken
council.
Cockrell Sr.
Ken
Senior.
Cockrell Sr. So all these people they were coming to us. You know what I'm saying? They were coming to us, pitching their speeches, it was just like I was in a daze. Like it was like a dream because I had never seen anything like that before. And even, I have to give a shout out even to Fofo. You know what I'm saying? He came through. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just an amazing thing. Like the older folks was like behind us, like those 1960s people, just like Tim was saying, they was like, we're not running your race, but we're gonna give you here, take everything you need to run this race. I mean, Coleman Young thought of everything: toilet paper, sanitary pads, paper towel. I mean, napkins, anything you could think of that we would need. I mean, they supplied us with everything. And those are the things that are not discussed when we talk about it. That's a part of like the organic piece that you're speaking of. These were human beings in this building. You know what I'm saying? You had women that had to have a cycle. You know what I'm saying? It was like, it was real, and I think a lot of that gets lost at the same time. And also the fact that we, at that time in that building, we actually took on those roles unconditionally, about as far as the men's responsibility and the women's responsibility in that building. It was not something that had to be discussed. It was in us. Like Tim said, you had people that automatically, security. We had a Green Beret in the building. You know what I'm saying? It's like people took on roles that they did not have to be a lot of times chosen for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if I may, also, Lynn said something very interesting about the roles and whatnot. Going back to the threat of the firebombing, we got word of it too, because just like they had moles, we had moles too, and we had word that it was about to go down, and so we knew that we weren't going to punk out and leave. They were going to have to do what they were going to have to do. But we were not going to let the sisters be harmed. We were going to make sure that if they got to them, they got to them over us. So we put all the sisters in a circle and we linked arms and made a chain around the sisters facing the officers. And we was like, hey, it's going to be what it's going to be. Bring it.
We were nonviolent with those who were nonviolent with us.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, can I ask a question real quick? Because when on that note about the threats and whatnot, because again, so I'm on campus at the time, but I'm not in the studying, right? So school is taking place, and so I remember being in the student center building, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys was, how are you communicating with the outside world and how aware you were what was going on? Is it true? Because one of the rumors, and I want you guys to substantiate this, because one of the rumors said that they were in the basement of Helen Newberry, like bursting balloons so they could sound like gunshots to elicit fear in you guys, because they didn't want to cross a certain line. But that's one of the things that we were told, that they were like, I was like, if they're relegated to being in the basement popping balloons, that's good. I mean, so did you guys hear that? And is that true? Is that an urban legend?
Well, I didn't hear that, but they froze us to death. They definitely froze us to death.
They turned off
the heat off. And the water.
And the hot water. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
it was summertime, so we had, I mean, they froze. It was summertime, right? It was
April.
it was
No, it was in
in
April.
So it
Yeah,
was
so it's still
cold.
chilly.
Cold.
It was
Super
spring because
cold.
finals were looming. Finals were looming, right?
That's
Yep.
right. That's right. So
Yep.
there had been an incident, I believe, and there were times when, at the very beginning, people could leave, right, and come back in. Now they stopped that after like a couple of days, because like people were coming in, right, and so they were like, no, if you leave, then you can't come back, right? They had the police at the door. We had certain levels of the building, and they had certain levels of the building. We didn't occupy the entire building from floor to ceiling, but the parts of the building that we didn't occupy, they did have security come in to secure those buildings, lock all the doors and those types of things. And so that was part of how we were able to also communicate. We did have a payphone for a little while.
Yeah.
We were able to communicate then. There were people who would leave in order to get messages out. And then there were times when we would have, one of the things that John Conyers did early on was he was like, okay, so how do y'all plan to communicate with the people? And we like, and so he brought down a microphone and a speaker, right? So we could talk. And then we would have these sessions, and these were things that we had to negotiate all through the process, right? And if it's not for the community, the community stood behind us in everything we asked for. The university probably would have never gave it to us. But it was like, okay, we got to do it because look at all these, it's another
Yes.
200 in there, but it's like 300-400 Black folks out here.
Yes.
And so we said we want a microphone. We want to go out and speak to the people. And when speaking to the people, we would say repeat it, right? Or either with a bullhorn or set up a podium and a microphone that John Conyers' office provided.
Another thing, hold on, Quan. I want to throw this in real quick because this is something I think that people need to know as well. The no in and out rule made it difficult for us to eat.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't go out and over the Friar Tucks or whatever. So what someone came up with this ingenious idea was to go and grab some battery cables and a milk crate. And the second floor window was low enough to where we could shimmy it down.
Mm-hmm.
And people would come and put the Little Caesars baby pans and sandwiches and things like that in the milk crate. And then we would raise it up and we would pass them out. That was before. I mean, we all were sharing these sandwiches and these soft drinks, divvying up and because we were hungry. Because we couldn't go out, and it's not like Domino's was coming, to drop off anything. So we had to, right. So we had to become innovative with just with getting food. So it wasn't until someone saw, I think it was Daisy Robinson. I think she was out of the window. I think she was pulling up the crate, and the news crew saw that, or photographer, someone saw that, and that was one of the reasons why it got out. They must be hungry in there,
right?
And then food stuff started coming, right? We were. I gotta give credit where it's due, whether it's political or not. One of the Illiches, Lisa Murray Illich, came and brought donations of pizza over, from Little Caesars.
When Irma Henderson had came and spoke to us, and
yeah.
some of the fellas was like pushing her, like, we need to eat.
Yeah.
We hungry,
And she pulled out some money.
Here. She pulled, they was grabbing money from her, and she was giving up money, and they was ordering food and having it brought there. Like, you couldn't come in there with no agenda and not give something back. You know what I'm saying? Like, because this was an election year for them. Like, they were running for election to be mayor. So they knew the cameras was down there on us, and they were there, all of them, they were there, and they would come in and out, they would speak, but what are you bringing us? That's what it was,
When you mentioned the community involvement, you talked about the politicians and the businesses, but I'm wondering what other sectors of the community were involved in this, in helping and assisting you guys with this studying.
Oh, the African Center. Aisha Shule was out there. You know what I'm saying? Everybody
Inner City
was
Sub Center.
Yeah,
Yep.
in the city
Akubalan
yes,
martial arts.
Akubalan arts. Yes, everybody,
Yeah, Paul
everybody that
Taylor.
you consider our community
The
was out there.
definitely the grassroots
All
active
grassroots.
community.
Yes.
But in addition to that, other students, our parents,
Yeah.
our family members. There were specific days of rallies, and they would show up. And there's a distinct difference because shortly after that, there was a student takeover at Michigan State, like a few weeks later. And obviously, being at Michigan State, being up in Ingham County, they didn't have that support.
Right.
And up there, they physically, the Klan physically burned a cross. Michigan militia stood out in Michigan State with their guns. But within Detroit, that never happened because the community, I think it was one day it rained and it was only probably about 25 people out there. But the other days, we always had 50 to 100 people
out there
that were just out there supporting us. And when she talked about Aisha Shule, one of my most emotional experiences was to see these kids come up doing the boy saying, "We are African people. We are at war, carrying jugs of water to pass in through us, to pass in to us." You know, and that was like one of the most emotional, memorable things for me. Like it made me. That's what pushed me into education, quite honestly. But thinking about it, you know, it was all of these other. There was the broader community at all levels. Not everybody's parent agreed with it. Some people got put out of their home. Some people's parents said, "I disown you for being in there." Some people, "I didn't send you down there to take over no building. You're supposed to come out and the other." So it wasn't easy for people, but there was enough community out there to make people to make the system think twice about how they wanted to respond to us.
Yeah.
Hey, and big shout out to my homie and friend, former Piston All-Star John Sally, because he actually sent he sent support and financial support, in fact, over towards the end. But he was moved by what we were doing, and you know, beautiful human being, wonderful brother. And every time I get a chance to see him, I got nothing but love and hugs for him. But we became very, very good friends after that that sit-in, that study-in. But he was very, very moved because, understand, for John Sally, he was coming into his own consciousness at that time. And becoming more spiritual and more African-centered in his thinking. And you saw it in his athleticism. The way he carried himself both on and off the court. When he first got to the NBA, you know, he was like most rookies, but over time he started to develop a certain ethnic and cultural maturity that some of the other Black players did not have, and a lot of that I believe was inspired by what he saw us do at Wayne State.
Well, I got a question. You mentioned what happened at Michigan State and they didn't get that same support. I mean, why do you think this outpouring of support was so heavy in Detroit?
Oh, because Detroit is the epicenter of black struggle. Detroit is giving birth to the Shrine of Black Madonna. Detroit is giving birth to the Nation of Islam. Detroit is giving birth to some of the Union movement. You know, so you have a whole host of I should say revolutionary relics that you can just go out in your yard and pick up. Metaphorically. So this has always been a town, a city or town, you know, depending on who you're talking to. Some will call Detroit a town because all these folks have come from other places, but this city, Detroit, is chock full of people who have always wanted something better, wanted something different. And whether it was and had to fight for it, whether it was us coming from the South, whether it was the Germans, the German immigrants coming over, that were living on the east side near, they had to fight for their situation. You know, I mean, Detroit is just that place.
It's a struggle town.
It's a struggle town. So I mean, this is where the "I Have a Dream" speech was practiced.
Yeah.
Right. So Yeah, you may not find that in any other place than Detroit, because no other place has the history that Detroit has. In fact, I'll say this and I'll get off of it. Detroit's history with respect to Black leadership is so unique that you had a city where you had a Black mayor, a Black city council, a Black police chief, a Black fire chief, a Black prosecutor, a Black county clerk, and a Black city clerk. You know, black judges. You got cities that are just now getting their first Black mayor. We've had 6.
And we had one who stayed there and retired. He passed away as mayor.
Right, you know what I'm saying? He never got defeated.
The only mayor I ever known all my life.
And he inspired other Black mayors. He inspired a Harold Washington. He inspired a Mayor Jackson. You can't talk about Black mayors without talking about Coleman Alexander Young in Detroit. So it's not unimaginable. Unimaginable. One of y'all help me. It's not beyond reason. I'll say that it's not beyond reason to suspect that Detroit, that we would have that kind of support, because we were only doing what was in our DNA. It's in the water.
Right. I mean,
I
believe that we are our best when we do function as a community, and just I agree. Yeah, and just to hear how that outpouring just from school, from young people, from old people, from businesses, I think that's a blueprint just how we should work anyway. Like, that should just be GP. Like, that's how
absolutely
that in our history we are best when we function as a collective. So yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I also wonder, you guys mentioned, I know, Pharaoh, you mentioned that you lost a scholarship, and I know these type of things. I've heard criticisms in the past where it's like, you do this type of stuff, expect to sacrifice. It's not a true movement unless there's some type of sacrifice with it. So I'm wondering, like, what other personal sacrifices did you guys have? I know you guys mentioned being traumatized by the experience as well. Like, so I'm interested in some of those sacrifices that happened because of your involvement.
Well, like Brother Chris said, some people actually were put out of their homes because the parents weren't with it. Fear is a crippling thing. And when people are afraid and afraid for you, they'll do things and say things that maybe under normal circumstances they would not do. And so the scholarship was one thing. I mean, I needed it. I definitely needed it, but I was willing to sacrifice it because today students can take MLK Day off at Wayne State University, whereas when I was there, you couldn't, even though it was a federal holiday. So losing a scholarship so that you all now can enjoy that, you all can walk the halls of the department where there's a degree granting, department. I didn't have that. I never. Everyone has to take a everyone has to take a class in Africana Studies now, at least one. That was not necessarily part of the curriculum when I was there. So to see what has happened as a result, it was worth the scholarship for me. When a woman is giving birth to a child, she's sacrificing the possibility of her losing her life to bring forth a new life into the world. So, a scholarship is nothing because I can get another one. I still got my degree. So they ain't stopped nothing. They slowed it down a little bit, but they ain't stopped nothing. But I mean, if you're not willing to give up something, how can you ever gain anything?
Let me ask this, because that's a valid point, Brother Pharaoh, and it's so true, and it shows up in a variety of ways, and I think that was a great question, because I've heard stories of people who lost scholarships, and one of the demands I understand that you guys came up with was the ability to allow students who participated to not suffer consequences, to be allowed to take their finals and complete those classes and those grades. And so if you guys, as we prepare to wrap up, respond to that, but also think about, if you could, what do you feel is the best way to capture that history in a way that it does inspire a new generation?
I think
Yeah.
the best way to capture that history, what we experienced there at Helen Newberry Joy that day, is to tell the story, the full story. Don't piece it out. Don't glamorize it. Don't feel like you need just enough to just put out. I think the process from beginning to end, because there's so many layers to it, you know what I'm saying? And not to expose all the layers would be disingenuous to the struggle that we had, you know, there, you know. It, like I said, it changed my life, you know, and I'm sure it changed the lives of many people. I got brothers and sisters all over the world that were in the study in. They military people I haven't seen since then. It's been 30 years. They were going off because I think something happened. One of the young ladies that was really there close with us, I can't think of her name right off, but she had to leave. She had to leave and go overseas because she was military. She had to stop school and go military. So out of those 200 people that were there, they're all over the world, you know, and it would be a wonderful thing if something could happen that would generate them all coming back as a unit, you know, for us to have some type of reunion, you know, to see each other again, you know. But that's my main thing with that is, if it's going to be said, that it be organic and genuine, you know.
I also
I'm
want
sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Chris, you go ahead.
Okay, I would like to add on to that. You know, as she said, the story has to be told. Students there, you will find, are angry because they don't know that it existed.
Yeah.
Washed down, and I don't expect the university to tell our story, but we have to figure out how to document this. There's an offer on the table with the Museum of African American History right now for a short documentary, but you can't tell this like the three of us can't tell this story, right? What you're getting is a snapshot of our experience.
Absolutely.
There's a broader experience. If you talk to Dr. Gloria House, Mama Neb, she's got a totally different experience. She was in the negotiating. If you talk to Mikhail Ansari, he was in the negotiating team. If you talk to Daryl Dawson or Earl Henderson, Earl wasn't a student there at the time. He was actually a student at the University of Michigan, but he had graduated from Wayne State and he was working on his doctoral studies at the University of Michigan. But so that everybody has their own lens as to how they interacted and the work that they did. And I think the whole story has to be told, because I think in order for students to understand how this came together and be successful, it was about what we talked about earlier, people coming together from every different walks of life and playing their position and working to throw ego out of space, you know, out of the space. So I would love a documentary, a book. I'm not really sure what's the best me. I mean, definitely for the young kids, for the young people, you know, digital media is best. It's succinct. You can do a lot more with it. But definitely, you know, following up with this to do something strong like that. And when you talk about sacrifice, I mean, I don't even know. We knew we were making that sacrifice. We knew it was something that we had to do, and we was going to stand together as long as we were standing together. And we did have to negotiate our terms to come out of the building, and to protect our the reason we called it a study-in is because we saw ourselves in the lineage of Black scholars in America. And we weren't just going there to sit, we were going there to study, and we were studying our history and the world's history. And so, you know, all of that has to be taken into context through the lens of various experiences. So it's a broad project because people have different things that they want to communicate about it, both good and troubling and challenging. But nevertheless, as my cousin said, we have to tell the whole story. We have to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, and there was a certain amnesty that was asked or negotiated, if you will, for us to be able to take finals. But the College of Fine and Performing Arts was pretty sagacious in how they wanted to make an example of some of us that were part of it, because they couldn't just outright say, you shouldn't have had your black ass in that thing. They couldn't just come out and do that. They you didn't accumulate enough hours for the program in this dispensation of time, so that now your scholarship is in jeopardy. And they found some kind of way to do it. But expulsion was off the table. So that was the biggest thing. Again, scholarship, I just work a second job if I need to. I had financial aid coming in too. So I'll work it out. But expulsion, because that'll carry. If I try to transfer to another university, they might not accept me in. So, that was a real thing. So we were able to avoid that with the amnesty that was negotiated, so that none of us would have to deal with the labeling. Our files would just remain at FBI headquarters. And that be that.
So I want to get on the FBI thing in a minute too, but I want to ask this question: what were the key issues that you guys were able to negotiate and get passed?
Woo. Okay. I don't have the list in front of me, but among those, and comrades, help me out. Among those were obviously the creation and funding of a degree granting department with the title of Africana Studies. The other part was to promote more African American professors to full tenureship within the department, as well as with other departments, because they said that's where the disconnect in Wayne State's so-called equity was. It was like, yeah, we work here, but we're not making as much as that professor, and we got the same credentials.
Right.
Another was obviously the Martin Luther King's day off, or day of celebration. The other was to immediately stop the dismantling of the Center for African American Studies, or Center for Black Studies, was it called?
Black Studies,
Studies.
Yeah, Center for Black Studies, to stop this dismantling. Oh God, that's as far as I can get down the list right now. There was a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff got taken out of the list in the final agreement, but obviously those were some of the top things.
Yeah, one of the things I remember specifically being taken out was there was a desire to have the death date of Malcolm X observed also on campus, and that did not obviously pass over, and I actually prefer that it didn't, because I would rather celebrate the time that he was with us than the time that he was taken from us. But nonetheless, those we were going to throw as much on the wall to see what could stick. But the main thing obviously was the department. I couldn't get none of my parking tickets, taken care of. Yeah. So it was, worth a try at least. Say you have not because you asked not.
Right.
But did you 89 too, huh?
Oh
yeah, man. Yeah, those parking fees was wicked. They gonna get you one way or the other.
Yeah, so we are actually at our time limit, man. We have to actually went 4 minutes over, and
okay.
You see, I mean,
this can go on forever.
This can go on forever. So many dimensions, so many alleys to turn down, so many more questions to ask. But I just wanted to, thank you guys, because at the time of the sit-in, '89, I was in elementary school. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it. But 10 years later, though, I was on campus, and I reaped the benefits. I had the Africana Studies classes with my degree. I actually had the opportunity to sit. I mean, I met Dr. Henderson. He was my professor as an undergrad student, and that's when I was just talking about this phenomenal professor, and I was telling Shannon about it. Shannon was like, "Yeah, you don't know about this guy?" I was like, "No, who is he?" And Shannon dropped. I was like, "Man, I never knew that this happened." And so I was able to take, just some of the things I learned from Dr. Henderson, not necessarily what he taught, but the way he taught, and I was able to use it in my own profession.
Yeah.
As a teacher as well. And so, years later, being able to hook up with Chris, I worked with Chris and Farrell at my school, and so things just came full circle. So I'm second generation of you guys' work. I'm the fruit of
that makes me feel so good.
Yeah, and my students, they benefit from what you guys did as well, because they benefit from me. And so definitely the work that you guys did as young people, maybe you saw it as being like, yo, this is what we're doing right now, but definitely is, 30 years later, it's still is important. It's still bearing fruit. And then also, it's a story I think it needs to be in the spotlight. It needs to be shined up, because it's an inspiration. Just how, just listen to how you guys talk about the community coming together. I think one of the big reasons why the community came together, because they were inspired, and so I think telling that story is going to reap the benefit of inspiring a whole new generation of people that don't know anything about what happened.
Well, I want to brother, I want to first of all say, your words have touched me. But above and beyond your words, what you are doing with your students and the impact that you are making in our community, is so remarkable. And I told you the other day, we're very, very proud of you. And that is what I'm talking about carrying the baton to the next leg of the race, because we all got a leg in this race, and we can't do it without each other. I want to give a big shout out to my godmother Joanne Watson, who was very instrumental in helping with the community involvement. Kwame Kenyatta, may Allah be pleased with him, may he rest in peace. Reverend Holly, who was kind of like a peace banker between the university and between David Adamani and Daryl Dawsey at times. Big shout out to Bill Bonds because he gave us the platform on Channel 7. And Daryl cracked his head.
He had to crack his head.
Big shout to Spike Lee, who gave us a big box of free passes to see Do the Right Thing when it premiered.
Sure did.
So no, Do the Right Thing. Yeah, it was Do the Right Thing. Yeah,
Do the Right Thing.
So big shout out to the Fudgery. Big shout out to all those those companies that said we could eat at discounted rates, and for that whole time, that is like that whole year we were like rock stars. We couldn't go nowhere and pay a full bill. You know what I'm saying? I felt like I needed some Secret Service. So and again that it was a wonderful time, and I pray that if I can't get my hair back, that at least I never forget, those 12 days that I spent with those wonderful and beautiful Black men and women that have become a very permanent part of my life and my psyche.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Absolutely. And much respect to you, Brother Quan. I didn't think much of the work that I had done and its impact until I walked in your classroom and seeing the legacy, and that just fueled me and inspired me to know and then meeting your relationships, good brothers like Shannon, and the work you all do with Black Leaders Detroit, seed funding and keeping things, keeping our businesses and nonprofits afloat, man, just tremendous effort. I salute you both. I respect you both immensely. Anything you ever need from me, I'm here. I do just about anything for y'all. I ain't going to jail, but I do anything for y'all. But I much respect and thank you for giving us this platform. And I'm looking forward to keeping this going, man. This conversation in any format or venue that you choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to give you a shout out to both of you guys. I'm very proud of you. It's just giving me chills to know that this is still moving forward with the children. I'm elated, and I just want you to know anything you want from this sister right here, all you gotta do is call me. Okay,
Indeed.
I'll be here.
All right.
Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. This was amazing. So yeah, we're going to trust it, that this story will make it to a more accessible, a fuller manifestation. I'll just say that I don't want to overpromise or underdeliver, but I want to do my part to make sure that happens. So I'll just leave it there. So yeah,
It's so many of us. It's so many of us. Like personalities, like abundant. It's so many of us. You know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there it is. I'll say, in demand, we follow the spirit of the 1989 sit-in. You know, if you are someone who's inspired, you're looking to be involved, check us out at imindemand.com. If you're interested in being a mentor, a volunteer, or are you interested in going full-fledged, being an educator, we can connect you with those resources to get started. So thank you guys again for being on the podcast, and thanks.
Sunrise, some people fall, some won't answer the call, but we maintain through it all. We maintain through it all.
Teaching is my superpower. Setting an example for the youth to follow. By any means, it's still the motto. Serve my community and build scholars.